What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 361 of AskGSM, here today for Wednesday, October 28th, 2020. It is Halloween week, and tonight we got the return of Halloween Havoc for the first time in 20 years on NXT. We got Full Gear coming up next weekend. We have Hell in the Cell in the books from Sunday, Bound for Glory in the books from Saturday. It's been quite the eventful time right now in the wrestling world. I'm very excited for everything going on, with the obvious one being Halloween on Saturday. I'm very much looking forward to that. I was very happy to have done 2 Halloween episodes here of Hashtag in 2016, and another one, I think, in 2018. We did 2 Halloween episodes, those years, which were great. I love doing those. So check those out if you haven't already. But I do have a bit of a busy schedule today, so I do got to keep the show on the shorter side for today's edition. But before we get to answering the questions, you can tweet me with your questions on Twitter at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop your question on the post that I usually, and I didn't last night, and I apologize, it's been a busy week, that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, and if I don't, you can always drop your question on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the YouTube section, on the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Second thing before we get started here, speaking of YouTube, I have 2 interviews right here on the channel from the last couple of days. Actually, 3, I guess, if you include the Heyman one, but that was about a week and a half ago. But this week alone, we had my interview with Jeff Hardy go live at 8 a.m. on Monday. And then also, today, literally just hours ago, my exclusive interview with WWE NXT star Cameron Grimes before his Halloween Havoc Haunted House of Terror match tonight on NXT against Dexter Lumis. That was a completely in-character interview. It was so much fun, so definitely check that out, both interviews out if you haven't already, before we get going here today. So let's get going here with today's question, starting with Gadim Gomez from YouTube. Their question was, "Hey Graham, Keith Lee's stock has been falling after the pissing awful Braun Strowman versus Keith Lee main event on Raw's self-proclaimed season premiere. Do you think it's time for WWE to pull the trigger and turn him heel during Survivor Series? Because Keith Lee's booking is terrible. Though it's not his fault, WWE's treatment of NXT call-ups this year has been awful. I would not turn the guy heel. I mean, especially on Raw, which is where he stayed in the draft. I can see what you mean. That match was not good. His booking has not been terrible. It just has been less than stellar. I can think of a number of NXT call-ups who have been booked worse than Keith Lee. I mean, he wasn't pinned up until that match. He was never pinned against Drew or Randy. He was immediately thrust right into the WWE title picture. Granted, he was immediately moved away from that title picture right after Clash of Champions, and he really hasn't done a lot since. But I have seen worse booked people. He came in with an impact. The theme song is terrible. I don't like the theme song. The attire isn't great. His booking has not been great, but it hasn't been terrible either. He did beat Randy Orton clean in his very first as a main roster guy, because he was a part of the Rumble and Survivor Series last year. His first official singles match on WWE pay-per-view saw him beat Randy Orton. So I can't say it's been awful. That being said, though, it hasn't been great. He is on Team Raw at Survivor Series. I would not turn him heel. For the sole reason, not that I don't think he could do well as a heel, but he just started as babyface, and not only that, Raw is jam-packed right now with heels. We have a heel WWE champion. He can't feud with Randy Orton again if he's already a heel, too. So we got a heel WWE champion. We have a heel Braun Strowman, a heel Fiend, I guess if he's a heel, I would assume. If I had to take a pick, he's more of a heel. We have a heel AJ Styles, a heel Sheamus, a heel, I think I already mentioned Braun Strowman. We have a lot of heels on Raw, is what I'm trying to get at here. A heel Hurt Business. We do not need a heel Keith Lee. I just don't think that would really accomplish anything, and he would probably just be stuck in the mid-card, even more so than he is right now. So I don't think that's a good idea, at least not right now. No Laura. I would book, not really a question, but they said, I would book an Adam Cole versus Drew McIntyre rivalry and call back to NXT saying how they never had a one-on-one match before. I completely agree with that. I think that'd be cool. I mean, to be fair, they technically did have one-on-one match. It was a house show. It wasn't televised immediately, but they did air it at the end of the year, beginning of 2018 maybe. It happened right before McIntyre got hurt. It was while he was still NXT champion. It was probably like the day before TakeOver War Games 3 years ago. They ended up airing the match like maybe a month or 2 later, and Shawn Michaels served as the special guest referee. And I'm glad they did the match at the time, because they were, Cole debuted by attacking McIntyre, and they never really followed up on that. until Cole, McIntyre got hurt. He lost the championship anyway, so they never really had a chance to finish up that feud. And we've never really gotten a televised rematch. And obviously, Cole's still in NXT. But on the main roster, I think that'd be sick. The only issue with that right now is the exact same thing I just got done talking about. Raw has a ton of heels right now. They do not need more heels. So that's the big problem with the Undisputed Era going to Raw. Unless they show up as babyfaces, which they currently are in NXT, I would want to see them get called up as heels. Again, they could be face, but I feel like it would make more sense to bring them up as heels. And Raw has too many of them right now. And you can't do a McIntyre-Cole feud if Cole's a babyface and McIntyre's a face too. So that's the problem with that. But at some point, absolutely. I think a McIntyre-Cole feud would be great, playing off their history from NXT. That's kind of what I wanted with McIntyre and Andrade. And WWE did acknowledge that. The only issue is that they kind of gave it away right after WrestleMania as a throwaway Raw match. McIntyre won clean, and that was it. They may have had one more match after that, but they immediately disregarded it and did not make it into a full-on program as I hoped that they would. At Reborn Again from Twitter, John Ritland from the YouTube Machine, of course, check out his show. Real Honesty with John Ritland, always great content. His first question was that women's segment in the following Fatal 4-Way match one of the most messy ways to use the women this year? I mean, it's just so lazy, and I've said this before, but Nia and Shayna ending up on Team Raw, to me, made sense just because they are the women's tag team champions. I get it. But Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke just being named for the team because they've won 2 matches on Raw since they got brought together a couple of weeks ago. That's what earned them their spot on the show, or their spot on Team Raw. Give me a fucking break. I thought that was really dumb. Dana Brooke is terrible. I don't care what anyone says. She has improved marginally over the last couple of years. She's not championship worthy. Maybe tag team champion, but those belts mean nothing, so it really does not matter anyway. It's a waste of Mandy Rose. But then to have a qualifying match for the last spot was also a joke. And then they had the worst woman of the 4, Nikki Cross I like. I like Lacey. I like Peyton. I like all the women. And then, of course, they have Lana, who's absolutely terrible, who they're trying to push, I guess, as a babyface, and it's not working. The booking is a joke. I don't care if it's because of Miro or not, being an AEW. Their booking is terrible, and she's just terrible in general. So the fact that she won was terrible. I don't know if it was the worst women's segment I've seen all year or one of the messiest, but it definitely was just I threw my hands up in the air after Lana won, and I was like, dude, what the fuck? I mean, come on. Literally anyone else would be better in that position than Lana, who just lost to Asuka in a minute or two last week on Raw. Why would I take her seriously? She'll probably be eliminated in 10 seconds anyway at the show, so what's even the point, His second question, so I gotta ask, it's been nearly a week since the Le Dîner Debonair segment on Dynamite. Was it really good in a cheesy way or damaging to the MJF character, or damaging to MJF just in general, for the long run and more evidence that Jericho just doesn't care anymore? I said this before. We talked about this on WrestleRant Radio last week. The clip of that is up here on the channel from last Thursday. But in short, I enjoyed it. Was it the greatest thing I've ever seen? Absolutely not. I'm not going to sit here and say it was comedy gold. Fuck all of you for not getting it. This is wrestling, blah, blah, blah. Listen, everyone is entitled to their own opinion. With something like this that is so subjective and so polarizing, I completely get it. Anyone who is shitting on this is completely entitled to do so. There are some things that are so bad it's hard to defend, and some things that are so good that it's hard to shit on. But with something like this, I can absolutely see it being both ways. For me personally, I thought it was funny. I got a chuckle out of it. I enjoyed it. Didn't hate it. I mean, RJ and I talked about this last week. He fucking hated it. I didn't absolutely love it, but I thought it was, not that it was good, but I enjoyed it for what it was. Is it damaging to MJF? That was the second part of your question. So, the Jericho thing, does he just not care anymore? I don't know if it's about him just not caring, because he did great work as the AEW World Champion. It's just that it's so inconsistent. I mean, Jericho was the top heel 6 months ago, and now the guy's a fucking joke, losing to Orange Cassidy, this shit, and again, not that it's shit, but I meant in the way, stuff, this stuff, it's a joke. Whether you enjoyed it or not, it was a joke. The guy's a comedy character now, and he could do comedy, and I know he was doing the whole list thing in WWE, that was kind of comedy. I don't know, I feel like he just hasn't won a meaningful match in a while. It is Chris Jericho. He's nowhere near being on the level that he was a year ago. And with MJF, it's not that the segment itself was damaging, it's the fact that the booking of the MJF character has been so fucking inconsistent, like I said. 1 second he's supposed to be this hated heel. Like, 1 second he's like a pest heel. The next he's undefeated. The next he's like super intense and making Jon Moxley bleed and taking him to the limit and as a world championship contender. The next he's a comedy character. The next he's not even on the show. To me, it screams they have no idea what the fuck to do with MJF. Like, literally since the beginning, this guy's never really had a set storyline. I feel like I agree with RJ, and which we talked about last week. It's been all downhill since that Cody Rhodes feud earlier this year, which was tremendous. It was great. He turned on Cody. They had a great feud. He beat Cody. And then he faced Jungle Boy at Double or Nothing, and then he faced Moxley at All Out. He got cheated out of the loss, and then he never went back for the title. He just forgot about it and moved on. Why isn't he in the tournament right now instead of Wardlow? He should be owed another shot from a storyline standpoint. If the babyface gets fucked, then we got to give him another shot. But if the heel gets fucked, no, we got to move on. That just doesn't make any sense to me. Why isn't he more concerned with getting another shot at the title? He's moving on to join the Inner Circle. Why? He was undefeated by himself for a year. Why does he need a stable? I just feel like it's incredibly random. They got to focus on that stuff. The comedy doesn't really bother me. The campaign shit wasn't really all that good. This was what it was, but it's not that I saw that segment and thought, okay, this guy's buried 10 feet under or he's ruined. It's just that they got to figure out what the fuck to do with this guy. Because it's so clear to me they have no idea. His next question, not sure how many of the WCW Halloween Havoc pay-per-views you've seen, but are there any particular matches or events that stick out in your mind, for good or for bad? So I think the only Halloween Havoc pay-per-view I've seen in total, in its entirety, was Halloween Havoc 89. I'm almost positive, and you could double-check me on this, that I rewatched it for a WrestleRant video about a year ago. I haven't done any WrestleRant videos since then. I really got to get back on that, but I watched the original Halloween Havoc, maybe the 90 version. I watched a Halloween Havoc, and I thought it was good. It was probably the original one from 20 years ago at that point, from 2019 to 1989. And I enjoyed it for what it was. I don't remember many matches that took place. The matches I do remember from Halloween Havoc, I have seen a handful of matches, specifically in the last couple of months alone. I have seen Eddie and Ray multiple times before. That's obviously the best of the bunch, the greatest match in Halloween Havoc history, and just one of the greatest matches in WCW history, period. But it's funny you mention that because we just got done, Alexis and I, rewatching some old Halloween Havoc matches last night. We watched that one because WWE has that Best of Halloween Havoc playlist on the network they put up yesterday, and I would strongly recommend checking it out before tonight. Some really, really good matches on there. But we watched the Eddie and Ray match. We watched Randy Savage and DDP, who had a really good match from also the 97 installment. And then we also watched Goldberg versus DDP in a great match. One of Goldberg's best matches ever at Halloween Havoc 1998. We did watch a couple of, a couple of months ago, I think, back in July. We watched the Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior match because we were watching like the best of Warrior. Clearly that was the worst of Warrior, but I wanted to show her the pay-per-view for the sake of showing her, I wanted to show her the match just to show her how bad it was compared to the original match of WrestleMania 6. So we watched that and it was fucking bad. It was really bad. Obviously that's probably one of the worst matches to come out of that show, but the best was Eddie and Ray, and the other ones were really good too. At Iwagu91, now that Sasha Banks has ended Bayley's long reign as SmackDown Women's Champion, the hope is that it won't end with her not successfully defending it once, like her Raw Women's title reigns went out. The wording there at the end was not great, but I know what you're saying, though. They obviously have to continue the Sasha and Bayley feud, whether it be at Survivor Series or TLC or whatever. They have to have one more match, and not only that, but when they do have another match, they have to bring up, they have to. Bayley's acknowledged this before, that Sasha cannot hold on to a championship to save her fucking life. This is why I wish they had done the pay-per-view match another time, because I guess they could, they can't actually, they can't do it at Survivor Series. I just remembered that Sasha's facing Asuka for like the millionth time again. For like the millionth fucking time. Who could possibly care, to be honest with you? They've had 1 million matches this year. Who cares? That feud was just, buried right into the ground this summer. And they had a lot of good matches, but still. So anyway, it would have been nice had they done it at that pay-per-view because they could bring up, Sasha, your reigns have never exceeded 27 or 28 days. They've always been, always 27 days or less. And by TLC, it would have been longer than that. Or if they do the rematch before then, they could always bring it up on SmackDown. But that rematch should be saved for a pay-per-view like TLC or the Rumble or whatever. But yeah, they have to bring that up. Sasha can win a lot of titles. She's won a lot of championships. The NXT title she defended a couple times. But the Raw Women's Championship she held 5 times, and she was never able to successfully defend it. Which is just crazy when you think about it. But at any rate, they got to bring that up, and hopefully they will. But yeah, I think it's just more a matter of when than if, because that's such a big plot point. That might even be bigger than the first match, because Sasha, again, has held a lot of titles. She has not been able to hold on to them, and Bayley can bring that up because she knows that better than anyone. At Iwagu91, again, did you know that despite Jon Moxley no longer being in the WWE, the Shield added another accomplishment, or achievement rather, together, being both, or all of them being ranked, at number 1 in PWI's top 500. I did not know that. I mean, obviously, I'm looking at the magazine right now. I have it sitting here in front of me, the Moxley one. I have yet to read it, but yeah, he was ranked number 1 this year for the PWI 500. Rollins makes sense. I think Rollins was actually number 1 either last year or a couple of years ago. I'm pretty sure he was number 1 last year. And then Reigns would make sense too. I mean, Reigns was probably number 1 4 or 5 years ago or something. I could definitely see that happening. So yeah, it didn't really surprise me when I read that, but I completely forgot about it. So that is a pretty cool accomplishment. They've accomplished a lot in the last 8 years, absolutely. His last question here. What are your thoughts on Randy Orton winning his 14th world title at Hell in a Cell, and Drew McIntyre's entire WWE title reign occurring without the crowds showing up in person? I mean, there's nothing we could do about that last part. There's no fans right now. I know the hope was like, oh, they might be back by SummerSlam. Listen, I thought they'd be back by fucking May. This pandemic is not going to end anytime soon. You can't keep the belt on him until fans come back, which I don't think is going to be until like next year. And they could have kept the belt on until WrestleMania or whatever, but he could always win it back in front of fans too, so that doesn't really bother me. I just thought Randy Orton was the wrong person to take the belt off of him. Honestly. Like, I like Orton a lot, I do. I think if you were going to put the belt on him, which I would not have, but if you were going to, it had to have been at SummerSlam when he was at his hottest. You could have put the belt on Orton, have McIntyre chase it, and maybe even McIntyre wins it back at Hell in the Cell. But to have him win it in their third match after the feud lost a lot of juice, the match was boring. It wasn't terrible, it was just really boring in my opinion. And then the outcome, I don't know, I'm just not a fan of it. I really have no desire to see Orton as champion, and especially with no strong babyface challengers. Riddle is not at that level yet. Jeff Hardy's he's in the middle of a feud right now with Elias, so he lost to it Hell in the Cell via DQ, so that's not exactly the feud I want to see right now. And Keith Lee has beaten Orton before, but he also really just has cooled down a lot since August. So I just thought it was a really dumb decision to put the belt on Orton. Maybe he'll exceed expectations, but if this is leading to Orton walking into WrestleMania as the champion to defend against Edge, I don't fucking care. Yeah, the original feud was great. They had a rematch. The original match was not great. The feud was better. They kept the feud going. The second match was better, but it really should just end there. And if they wanted to do a third match, then maybe. But for it to be for the championship between two part-timers, absolutely no thank you. I mean, I don't see Edge defending it every week showing up on Raw and wrestling on Raw as regularly as Drew did. So I love Edge, but I just don't need to see him beat Orton for the championship. I really, really don't. So at Iwagu91's next question here, I thought that was his last question. It wasn't. He said, what are your thoughts on Pentagon Jr. facing his brother, or replacing rather his brother Phoenix, to have a rematch from All In against Kenny Omega tonight on Dynamite? Yeah, so it sucks that Phoenix got hurt in the match with Omega, or rather got hurt in the match with Phoenix, actually. So his win really was for nothing. Phoenix advanced anyway, but there's nothing you could do. Omega really should have just gotten a bye. They really want to promote a big match for the show, and I get it. But he really should have just gotten a bye as opposed to putting Phoenix in there. I thought that was a little weird. But it should be good. I mean, that original All-In match was great. Omega and Phoenix have had a number of really good matches over the years in Northeast Wrestling. I think on Dark or Dynamite. They faced off one other time before for the AAA Mega Championship. And this would have been, I think, their third or fourth match together. But anyway, so yeah, I was really looking forward to that. Omega and Pentagon should be good too, because like you said, they faced off at All In 2 years ago. We never got a rematch. Omega won, I'm pretty sure. So that should be great, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. Next question comes from at noob_n_co 1991. Is the Hurt Business now moving on to the New Day for the Raw Tag Team titles now that they're done with Retribution? Yeah, it's possible. I could see that, the Hurt Business versus the New Day, definitely. I don't know if it would be before Survivor Series. The tag titles always fucking change hands before the show. And that kind of goes into the next question. Matt Jeremy 8911, I'll just mention this now. Do I see any titles changing hands before Survivor Series? And if so, which titles and to who? I feel like the titles change hands all the time before these pay-per-views to make the matches more interesting at the show. The tag titles have literally changed hands, I think, every year before Survivor Series. I'm not even joking. I'm pretty sure they have. So, yeah, I'm trying to think. I could, like, Bobby and Sammy. I don't know. I don't know if I would have Bobby drop the belt. Sammy just won his championship, so I don't know if either of those titles are going to change hands. Maybe Bryan beats Sammy and we get Bryan and Bobby. Maybe. I'm not banking on it, but it's possible. The tag titles, yeah, I'm kind of going off of Noob's question. I could see the Hurt Business winning the tag titles, although I think New Day and Street Profits would be awesome. So either way, I'm kind of happy with that. Could I see the Profits dropping the belts, like a Rude and Ziggler? Maybe. I don't really need to see that. Rude and Ziggler versus, New Day again? We just saw it on fucking Raw 2 weeks ago. I don't want to see that. Sasha and Asuka should be great, but again, it's a match we've seen a bunch of times. And even if Bayley gets the belt back, we would get Bayley and Asuka for the millionth and second time. So I don't really want to see that either. Asuka would have to drop her belt to, who? Fucking, I don't even know. They have no contenders right now, so I don't think that's happening. So yeah, maybe one of the mid-card titles. Maybe Bryan would be my guess. The tag titles, potentially. It's either the Hurt Business take the Raw titles, the Raw Tag Team titles, or Bryan wins the IC title, or both. But I don't know if I would do either one of those title changes, just because I don't think they're necessary right now. Another question from Jeremy. Should they just end Retribution as a stable and give all the gimmick to Ali and make Dabba-Kato his heavy? Honestly, that's not a bad idea. The group itself sucks. I like Ali in the heel role doing the whole hacker thing. I didn't think I would like it, but it's a step up from what he was doing earlier. Not that what he was doing before was bad, it was just they never really used him. So, yeah, give him the whole hacker thing, get rid of Retribution, have, the Fiend attack all of them, or the Hurt Business attack all of them, and they just disappear one by one. Make Dominik Dijakovic his own guy, Mia Yim his own guy. Dio and Slapjack or Shane Thorne, whatever. Dio, I'm not really sure if he was ready for a main roster call-up, and Shane Thorne, the guy who gives a fuck, who cares? He would end up on main event against Titus O'Neil. You know what I mean? So, I would end the whole Retribution thing. I think it's garbage. They've lost the Hurt Business twice now. They've lost twice, and now they've been destroyed by the Fiend. No one could possibly bring themselves to care. So I think Dabba-Kato as his heavy would work, though, because Dabba-Kato should not be on his own. Apparently, he got called up as part of the draft. He's not doing anything, and he won't be doing anything, nor should he be doing anything on his own. Dabba-Kato really should have been Styles' new bodyguard instead of the guy from Raw Underground and the Black Ninja. I guess they were all wearing black, but the tallest ninja from Akira Tozawa's stable. That's who the big Jordan guy is. That's what Styles. He looks clumsy as fuck. I mean, the guy, it looks like they could be a good pairing, but I think Dabba-Kato may have made more sense. That may have made more sense. But anyway, Ali and Dabba-Kato, that could be fine too. So, get rid of Retribution. It sucks. Jeremy's next question here is Rock and Roman. If Rock and Roman happens at WrestleMania, do you think it would be better off being a cinematic match where they don't have to worry about Rock getting injured? That's a good question. I'm going to say no, just because I feel like there are going to be fans there for WrestleMania 37. Wherever it's going to be outside, obviously, and there's going to be some fans there. I feel like you got to feed off the audience. Rock in a cinematic, I mean, obviously The Rock's an actor, so it might work, and Roman's a great actor too after what we saw at Hell in a Cell and what I saw in Hobbs and Shaw. So that's not the worst idea, but I feel like a match of that epic proportions has got to be like a match. And you know what? Like you said, Rock not getting injured, maybe that does work. Maybe they do that just because Rock wouldn't have to, worry about getting injured during an actual match. I don't hate the idea. I would prefer to see it as a formal match. How good that match would actually be, I don't know. But for if Rock's going to go out, I think it should be like an actual match with an entrance and everything, feeding off the audience. That's what makes Rock's matches special. The cinematic match just wouldn't have that. So it has its pros and its cons. I don't hate the idea, but if it's going to be Rock's final match, as he kind of made it sound like it would be, I feel like it's got to be in the ring as a normal, regular match. At RJ_Marceau, my brother Mr. Marceau, his question was, which first champion, AEW champion that is, was the worst decision in hindsight? Who would you have booked as the first champion in the respective division? That's a good question. So, can I say the FTW title? And I'm just kidding. So, he's saying, like, was there a bad first champion, and would I change anything? So, Chris Jericho was the first AEW World Champion. Absolutely perfect. Would not change a thing about it. He had a great reign. First TNT champion was Cody, a double or nothing. I wanted Archer to win, but Cody winning ended up being probably better. Maybe just because he had a great reign after that for a couple of months. So it wouldn't change either of those. It really comes down to Rio as the women's champion or SCU as the tag team champions. I would change maybe both. So with Riho, she didn't have a great reign because she was never on the fucking show. So that was issue number one. The second issue with that was that, some of the matches she had were decent. It just was plagued by bad booking. We never really got to hear from her at all and never really got to know more about her. So her reign was not the greatest, but I wouldn't change it just because if you don't put the belt on Riho, who else do you put the belt on at that point? Nyla Rose ended up having a pretty decent reign a couple of months later, but she wasn't ready back in October. People just would have pooped all over it. It would have felt forced to have the first transgender champion, for it to be our first champion. It would have felt forced. She wasn't ready for it. She ended up getting better, so I'm not going to say Nyla Rose. Although she did have a decent reign later on. Britt Baker just would have been too obvious, and again, she wasn't ready. As a babyface, it wouldn't have worked. She would have had to have been heel. I think they had Sheet at that point, but Riho was the best of the bunch. So they didn't have a lot of women to begin with, but Riho it wasn't like I was thinking, it should have been this person. Riho I never really cared about, but she was better than almost anyone else that could have been in that conversation. And then for the tag titles, so SCU also probably had a better reign than Riho did. They had a couple of good matches with the Young Bucks that I remember. They had a good match of Full Gear. I think it was a triple threat with Private Party and Lucha Bros. The problem with them winning the tag titles is that it absolutely should have fucking been the Lucha Bros. And no one can argue me otherwise. I mean, they were coming off that big win over the Young Bucks at All Out. They had a lot of momentum, really popular. They still are popular. But they lost a lot of momentum in the last year just by doing fucking nothing. Absolutely nothing. So it's I don't know. I'm not really sure. I really do think they should have become the first tag team champions. And then if you want to have them lose it to Adam Page and Omega, then sure, that's fine. They would have gotten a couple months with it. Cool. SCU, as much as I like SCU, it didn't really feel like the crowd didn't really react to it when they won. It just kind of felt abrupt. The match wasn't great when they won the belts. It just felt forced and weird. The Lucha Bros absolutely should have won those titles. So between the women's title and the tag titles, I'm going to say the tag titles, and they definitely should have gone to the Lucha Bros, in my opinion. At E1-3A, is Retribution just a low-budget Nexus? Essentially, yeah. I mean, the Nexus at least had some momentum early on. The Nexus at least had an amazing debut. They were booked. I mean, people still remember the Nexus because they had a great theme song even after they were booked badly, but they still had a great theme song. They were booked fairly well for the first couple of months, and then they ran into the roadblock that was John Cena. That was their biggest downfall. Retribution has never even had a rise. It's been entirely downhill since they debuted. The Ali reveal was cool for a week, and it still is cool, but they booked a stable like shit, so why would anyone possibly care? The talent in it, yeah, I guess Dijakovic is better than most of the people in Nexus, and Nexus had a lot of loser people like David Otunga, who cares, Heath Slater, who cares. But they made it work as it made sense. They had better chemistry together. This is just a random assortment of wrestlers. Storyline reason or no storyline reason, it's just random. So yeah, it does feel like a low-budget Nexus. People are making comparisons. It's not even close. Nexus was way better than this. Even in their final days, were better than fucking Retribution. His second question, why do you think Orton and McIntyre closed WWE Hell in a Cell? I was going to say the title change, but Sasha also won a title, so it's you could... I think the only reason that I can think of as to why they had that match close the show was because McIntyre, during his entire reign as champion for the last 6 or 7 months, had never main evented a show outside of WrestleMania. He was in the undercard for Money in the Bank. He was in the undercard for the June pay-per-view, which was Backlash. Extreme Rules in July, SummerSlam, Payback he wasn't even on, and Clash of Champions. Never main evented a single show aside from WrestleMania. Night 2 of WrestleMania 36. I guess they felt the need to kind of, make it. It was a big deal because it was his first singles loss in a year, but I just didn't want Orton to win, nor was the match all that great. Sasha and Bayley had a better build, even though the build has kind of been rushed, but it's been a better build recently. They've had a better feud. It was a way better match, and it was a bigger moment because Bayley's reign was even longer than McIntyre. She's been champion for over a year. That absolutely should have gone on last. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. No, I do not see any other argument otherwise. I agree with the McIntyre thing. That would have been shitty if he didn't defend it once in the main event. But the Bayley-Sasha thing takes priority. That definitely should have been the main event, because it was a much better match in retrospect anyway. If it was a shit match, I might feel otherwise. But the match was way better. And it's not even like, Orton and McIntyre were so late on to the show, that's why it was bad. Bayley and Sasha went on right fucking before it. Like 2 matches before. That's not really much of an argument. Final question from @Scarlet1. Best and worst of the following 3 events. The Wednesday Night Wars, Bound for Glory, and Hell in the Cell. So quickly from Dynamite, I liked the opening rounds of the World Title Eliminator last week. I thought Pentagon and Phoenix had a great match. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Wardlow and Jungle Boy also had a really, really good match. Omega squashing Sonny Kiss was great. Even Adam Page and Colt Cabana, the outcome was predictable. It was obvious. But it was a good match, so I really liked that. The rest of the show was just a fucking mess. I liked all that, but the Team Taz promo felt pointless. The Britt Baker squash was solid. But the main event, the Fatal 4-Way Tag Team match or whatever it was, with the Young Bucks becoming the number 1 contenders, it was just all over the place. The outcome was never really in doubt. Alex Reynolds got injured, which was fucking embarrassing. The referees did nothing to stop that. It was just... And then the Young Bucks are supposed to be like these cheery baby faces now. The whole booking of the Bucks has been terrible recently. Why even bother teasing turning them heel if they were just going to be baby faces for this feud? Just seems bizarre to me. But yeah, I thought the second half of the show sucked. The first half with the Fatal 4-Way World Title Eliminators, I thought, the Fatal 4-Way, the Fatal 4-Way was in the main event. The 4 World Title Eliminator matches to kick off the show I thought were really, really good. For NXT, I thought NXT was actually a really good show. I liked the main event. Danny and Oni beating the tag team champions. Breezango to win the tag team titles. The Pat McAfee reveal was really good. I thought that was great. He really impressed me at TakeOver 31. Or TakeOver 30, excuse me. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he's going to do in that role. Thatcher and Green was fine. Casey and Xia Li was whatever. I'm liking the Maverick and Killian Dane stuff right now. The 6-man tag team match, Legado del Fantasma versus Scott, Adonis, and Atlas was great. Reed and Theory had a good match. Ember Moon had a good squash. And the opening triple threat with Kushida, Ciampa, and Dream was also very good. So, 2 good shows. I thought NXT was better. For Bound for Glory, I'm trying to think. The main match is definitely delivered. The tag title match was good. I really liked the Rich Swann, Eric Young main event. Didn't really care about Deonna Purrazzo and Su Yung. It was supposed to be Kylie Ray. We never got an explanation as to what happened to Kylie Ray. I don't really give a fuck about Su Yung. I don't like the gimmick at all. So that didn't really do a lot for me. I thought that was questionable. I'd probably put that in the worst category, at least the booking of that. The Call Your Shot Battle Royal, it was just all over the place. That would probably be in the worst category. Didn't love the match, but it was what it was. The intergender stuff just didn't work for me. But James Storm coming back for it was fucking cool, though, so I like that. That would probably be in the best category. The opening 6-way for the X Division title was cool. I like that. And I'm trying to think. Ken Shamrock and Sami Callihan, Ken Shamrock and Eddie Edwards had a good match. The Moose and EC3 thing was fine, the cinematic match. So I thought it was a pretty good show overall. And then finally, Hell in a Cell. The main match is delivered. Even Orton and McIntyre, which I don't know if I would put that in the best or worst category. It was just fucking boring to me. But the best of that show was undoubtedly the Sasha and Bayley Hell in a Cell match and the opening Roman and Jay Hell in a Cell match. Both matches were incredible. And they made that show worthwhile for the 3 hours that it lasted for, or a little less than 3 hours, I guess. The rest of the show, it didn't even matter. Bobby Lashley and Slapjack, who fucking cares? Otis and The Miz, no one gave a shit about. The Swerve was shocking, and I like the briefcases on Miz more than it was on Otis, but if Heavy Machinery is going to end up on the same show because I heard Tucker might be traded back to SmackDown, then that's fucking stupid. then why even break them up in the first place if they're going to end up on the same show? If they're splitting them up because they're on separate shows, then fine. They'll reunite at some point, but if they're just going to end up on the same show, then that's dumb. And then what else was on the show? Elias and Hardy was just mediocre, just kind of existed. So it was a decent show overall, but the first two Hell in a Cell matches were really what carried it, in my opinion. And that's it. That's going to do it for episode 361 here today of #AskGSM. Thank you guys, as always, for tuning into the show. I know it was a shorter show than usual, just a little over a half an hour, but I do got to get going soon, so that's why. If you guys want to send in questions to the show, you could do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Be sure to drop a comment or question on the post that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, when I do, because sometimes I don't. And if not, you could always drop a question on the wall itself, which should still be a thing. I haven't checked in a while. And then last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. As I said earlier, 2 exclusive interviews up right now with Jeff Hardy on Bleacher Report for Monday. And today, if it's not up now, it should be soon, with Cameron Grimes, baby, from NXT ahead of Halloween Havoc tonight. The audio of both interviews is up right now here on the channel. The Hardy one went up on Monday. The Grimes one went up earlier today. The article versions on dailyddt.com or should be soon. The Jeff Hardy one is already up on Bleacher Report. And I do have another interview coming up soon later this week with former WWE ring announcer Lillian Garcia. Already did that interview. The audio, maybe not the audio, but definitely the written version, will be up here, not here, but on the What Culture page in the next couple of days. So a lot to look forward to, including Halloween on Saturday night. Very much looking forward to that. Got to go watch some scary movies, get my costume ready. Until then, guys, have a very spooky week. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.